Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Nigeria has been faced with complex and multidimensional security challenges over the last 2 decades, from insurgency to banditry and kidnapping to full-blown terrorism, from farmers-herders conflict to oil bunkering and piracy, and IPOB secessionist threats. The list is endless. As at the last count, the Nigerian security forces, the armed forces in particular, are engaged with at least 6 major operations. Operation Haɗin Kai, northeast. Operation Hadarin Daji, northwest. Sub-Haban, Plateau and environs. Wild Stroke, Nasarawa, Benue and Taraba. Thunder Strike, Abuja, Kaduna. And lastly, Operation Delta Safe for the South-South region. Despite spending 8 trillion naira in the last 7 years to procure arms and ammunition to tackle the insecurity challenges, Nigeria has remained third for the 5 consecutive years on the Global Terrorism Index. It is against this backdrop that we'll be interrogating the issues, the missing links, and the solutions to Nigeria's complex and multidimensional security challenges. And joining us for the discussion is a retired Army Chief, General Sani Usman Kuka Sheka. He is the former spokesman of the Nigerian Army. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
But before we commence the discussions, we'll take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's Daily Politics, and our talking point is addressing Nigeria's complex security situation. And we have in the studio a retired General, Brigadier General Sani Usman Kuka Sheka. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you so much.
Now, as we head towards 2023 election, and perhaps looking at the security situation in the country, Nigerians are beginning to, Nigerians are wondering, how we're going to go into this election with the rising cases of insecurity across the country, especially the issue of terrorism that is, on the rise, looking at how it is getting even close to the center, talking about the seat of power. The recent one has to do with the attack on the Kuje Correctional Facility, for instance, and an attack on the convoy, advanced convoy of President Muhammadu Buhari. These 2 incidences have, sort of eroded the confidence of Nigerians about the effort of the federal government and its forces to address this issue of insecurity. What exactly is happening? Some say it might be the collapse of the entire security architecture. Some say it's about failure of intelligence gathering. And some say the non-state actors are becoming, open their game. And of course, given Nigerian states, tough time. What exactly is the situation right now?
Thank you very much once more. I think beyond that, I think Nigerians should be more concerned, given the challenges as you have mentioned them, and the fact that every serious-minded person should be concerned about the security situation, more so in a matter of some months. There will be heightened, political activities and subsequently electioneering and all the rest. There will be concern. There is concern about, the electoral process, given the myriad of security challenges and recent happenings. And yes, be it what it may, whatever are the reasons, I think we have to critically look at them and make sure that we are able to solve this problem. Yes, there It's no society that is crime-free or without challenges, but it should be reduced to bearable, barest minimum that it can be managed given the, the population figure of this country. To me, it is really, really worrisome and disturbing. And that goes a long way to tell you that something is fundamentally wrong, or some things, not just a thing. And what do we do? I think we have to critically evaluate certain things and, come up with better ways of doing things and solution to the problems. You made mention of two instances. Take, for instance, the attack on the correctional facility. And if you look at it, people, sometimes they could be, they will be concerned. But the truth is that this is something that is bound to happen given, the kind of trends of things that are happening. Take, for instance, now, it is a common knowledge there are certain things that ought to not have been done. And even if they happen, no action is being taken against. And naturally, there will always be progress. And if put it rudimentarily, if there's somebody who, a petty thief that steals maybe 1,000 naira today and he goes scot-free, tomorrow he will up the game to 5, 10, 20, and may even move up to millions or thereabout, or hundreds of thousands as the case may be. And the same thing with criminal activities and criminality in this country. First and foremost, the deterrent measures are not there. People do things with impunity and they go scot-free. Then beyond that, again, the issue of taking proactive measures, because if you look at the number of attacks on correctional services and jailbreaks over the last 3 years, you look at then what happened. That is just by the way. And secondly, in talking about the issue of Northwest, the attack on the convoy, anybody that knows the route to Daura, if you are traveling by road to Daura from Abuja, naturally you have no business going through Dusama. The starting point in the first place, why did they follow that way? All right.
So should there be any restriction or any place?
No, there is no restriction whatsoever. No. If you are traveling, I think you make the best of it in terms of time and what have you. So what I'm trying to say, of course, they have every right to do whatever, to follow whatever route. But in the first place, the starting point is why that route. So when you start to ask the question why, you get answers and you get solutions to some of the problems. And it is not just that convoy that I'm talking about. A lot of things happening in this country, we hardly ask the question why. And once you know the answer to the why question, you have most of the solution to the questions or to the problems. Now, going back, it's just that we don't inspect what we expect. By that I mean, how do you tax people, give them responsibility, and without this follow-up,
corresponding to leadership
exactly, monitoring and evaluation to that, timelines and what have you. And that is why you can be able, even if there are mistakes, you can be able to mitigate the mistakes before they blow out of proportion. So the same attitude we have with the security challenges at virtually almost everything. Now, to me, all the security challenges, they are not devoid of solution.
Yeah. Okay.
And bulk of the solution, yes, we might require assistance here and there. It's supposed to be a local thing because they bordered on certain fundamental issues about governance in this country. Good governance.
Okay, before we begin to talk about the solutions, you raised two fundamental issues, even though you didn't answer the question, directly, because I was actually asking if it is about failure of the entire security architecture, if it is about the failure of intelligence, just like President has said.
Well, if you want me to
be specific,
that's, I would rather say it is not failure, because when you say failure, what I want you to understand is that for there are instances where the security agencies have been doing marvelously well, which is not reported. And just like everything in life, or just like they say one day, and every day for a thief, one day for the owner of the. So it is the same thing with the security activities. Nobody cares if you are doing well, even though people tend to appreciate and encourage, and which is expected. But the very moment there is kind of breach of security, everything that you have been doing over time. So that means you have to be doing things excellently well.
Yeah, because
so it has not failed in the sense that we are still having some semblance of security. But the breaches are there. But honestly, we ought to do better than it is, because there are other parts of the world that are experiencing. In fact, not quite a long time ago, we were making comparative analysis level of crimes in a particular society, so-called developed society. That, you know, people die by the minutes. But unlike we have window period, but that is not an excuse. The peculiarities of Nigerian society, we ought to do better. Life ought to be, you know, be more meaningful, more secured.
Right. Okay, the simple reason why people ponder on this issue is looking at, you know, the situation, I mean, the area or the location where this facility is. We're talking about the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, where, you know, a few kilometers away you also have military institutions, high-ranking military institutions, you know, including intelligence institutions and so on. Now, to have, you know, terrorists riding on about 300 motorbikes, for instance, in a large convoy, attacking a facility, having a field day for about 3 hours without, you know, any response from any quarters, and then doing all of this and freeing their colleagues and so on, and then at the same time, even celebrating, you know, the success before they leave, you know, it lets a lot to ponder. Where are the intelligence and the security networks, you know? What happened to their response, early response? All of this happened within the space of time, and they vanish into thin air, and yet nobody is being accounted for.
What I'm trying to say, and going back to what I'm saying, it is not as if it is not there, but it's the issue of coordination and synergy of effort. Because you have people that were saying, of course, information, they got information. But beyond that, had it been that there is synergy of effort and adequate security education among citizenry, because in most instances, even those people that passed information, we're just saying that something is happening in Kuje. Nobody, of course, you have to run for your safety, to be able to observe and say precisely. But those who have been paid for, have been trained for this, they ought to have passed the information. But even beyond that, they should have been able to have feelers that something is fundamentally wrong. But of course, it was there. Take, for instance, and I know there was a kind of noted movement or influx of mostly youth into the Federal Capital Territory. Now, the question to ask is, who are they? Why? And where are they going to? Had it been that you are able to do that, they might not necessarily be part of the people that carried out that. But it will tell you that something is fundamentally wrong, especially the issue of rural-urban migration. And you know that the population of this country is saturated by the youth, which constitute almost 65%. And what are you doing with that? You know that the devil, I mean, an idle mind is a devil workshop. You know the level of unemployment, you know the level of illiteracy, you know the economic hardships, and people are moving for greener pastures. And that is a recipe for disaster, in the sense that people ought to compromise, they may compromise standard if they cannot be able to take care of themselves or feed themselves.
Right. You're talking you're talking about deterrence earlier on, and talking about leadership accountability, which is also very key. Now, looking at, you know, what the government is doing, talking about the government at the center, for instance, it has been consistent in its own effort, you know, to do whatever it is within its powers, in spite of the limited resources, to cater for the needs of our security forces. 8 trillion naira was said to have been spent in the last 7 years. And yet, the security situation is multiplying, so to speak, beyond what we used to have. Initially, it was about the insurgency in the northeast. Now we have security issues almost all over the country. And then the indices are also not adding up. Nigeria, as it is the third most terrorized country in the world. Again, from 2015, it is also the 8th least peaceful country in Africa. That is going by the 2021 index. 146 on the global scale. So, looking at the interventions, the efforts, and the resources that are being expended or being pushed, into security sector, are we getting the result?
Well, you have reeled out statistics, and based on that, definitely we are not getting results, right?
So
but
why
then,
are we
of
not
course,
getting the result?
Well, you are talking about this humongous amount of money being expended. And I made reference to the issue of whatever you expect, you should inspect. And you are talking about leadership and accountability. Now, let's even look at the number. And given the security challenges, and I could remember one of the leaders of this country some time back, he was talking about how expensive security is. It's just like education. When you say it is expensive, you try ignorance. So the same thing, given the challenges.
So are people taking advantage of it? Because we need security,
I am coming
we should
to
take
that.
whatever we see.
No, not at all. Now, the 8 trillion naira, have you ever sat down and looked at it, what amount of money goes to where? And you know the concept of security, it is no longer state-centric. So it is not just about the security agencies and all the rest. The concept of security is all-encompassing. And therefore, the issue of security, somebody who is even hungry, he is also insecure.
That's right.
So basically, all of them, they are supposed to go hand in glove. To what extent have you improved the livelihood of these people so that they cannot be attracted to, compromising standards and getting into crime? These are the issues. And you are talking about correctional facility. I don't know whether it is slip of tongue or you just mentioned you are talking about military. And that is where, again, you are getting it wrong. There are certain issues, basically, they are not supposed to be a military issue.
Yeah, but I was talking about the institutions.
You have overthreatened the military to the point that now they are performing policing duties. But simply because we are not addressing the issues as it is. Because some of them, they have root cause to the very corporate existence of this country. Now, you are talking about federal government, and we have 3 tiers of government in this country.
The state and
the federal, the state, and the local government system. Only 2 tiers are working. The local government system is not working, with due respect, because most of them, they barely exist to issue indigenous form.
That is where they even exist.
Very
Some cases we are talking about.
So now they are supposed to be the buffer zone, a kind of something
first line intervention.
Exactly. In the first place, they no longer exist, talk less of performing their statutory duties. So a lot of problems that are supposed to be solved at that level are not being solved, are being pushed to state and federal level.
Yeah.
Unless you go back about what I was talking about, good governance, and we ensure that these things are working, and we deal with the issue of corruption in every form and ramification, then we will still be going in cycles. Yeah. And if you are talking about some of the security challenges, bulk of their solution is not military-based. It's not kinetic-based.
Okay, fundamentally, you come to a point that I really want to interject or, come in. Talking about non-kinetic measures, in addressing our contemporary security challenges. Several efforts, several strategies have been devised beyond, the military actions. There are also the carrot and stick approach. At some point, there are issues of dialogue, even though it is largely handled by the state actors, talking about the governments and what have you, the civilian authorities and what have you. For the military, it is there to aid, the civil authorities, even though it has become a dominant force in internal security arrangement, which shouldn't be so. Again, that was some would say it is a failure of the civil authorities too, because if the civil authorities are capable enough to handle the internal security strife, the military would have been, at the front line, or rather, saddled with their responsibility of protecting the integrity, territorial integrity, not internal security. Now, how are you looking at the various strategies that have been advanced, from the issue of dialogue, for instance, the issue of the carrot and stick kind of approach that was also used at some point, and now we're beginning to see something even incomprehensible, some would say. Take, for instance, what happened in Zamfara recently, where a bandit leader was turbaned, by an emir in his domain. Some say it is meant, to bring these people closer to, talk about the local solution you're talking about. But what do you make up with some of these measures that are being advanced?
Yeah, if we are looking at what happened in Zamfara recently, then it sent a message,
okay,
especially to the government. It's a kind of sign that the people are not satisfied with the way the government is handling issues. So they are devising every means possible to ensure their own safety and security. However, this issue in Zamfara, it has so many connotations. The first I've mentioned, but then we should not seems to be rewarding criminality with chieftaincy titles. But in their own case, they were coerced into it, because over time, he has been proven to be exactly the kind of dominant force with it. But this is not the first time since were happening. I could remember in the days of the civil war in Liberia, the Charles Taylor, in fact, it became a factor in the general elections, because, in fact, campaign slogans, who killed your mother, who kills your father, and who is going to protect you, the same Charles Taylor. So vote for Charles Taylor. So invariably, we are going to have a repeat of what is happening, or what happened in Liberia in that area. Now, a criminal, we are now consigning our destiny in the hands of the criminals, simply because we are disenchanted with the government. So it's a challenge, or it's a message.
But is it starting to take? Because already, talking about the ungoverned space, these non-state actors have been governing a lot of spaces.
So that is what I'm trying to say.
So that,
that is a wake-up call, even though, and we are not surprised that actually when the government disassociated itself with, even though people were saying that it was a face-saving measure. But be it what it may, I think we are awaiting the outcome of the panel, the results of the panel of investigation, to know actually why and what transpired, and what measures is the government taking, to remedy the situation. Otherwise, people look at it as a good omen, that yes, people should be forgiven and let them, so long as, because definitely he will bring fellow criminals into the fold, so that
they will feel belong, perhaps,
giving them sense of belonging. But I know that somewhere along the line there is a middle course. We tend to have policies, some assault. Sometimes you hear of dialogues. Sometimes you hear of other things. But you need to follow any measure that you pick with logical conclusion, and it is not just enough. You see, the security situation is that it's so complex that you cannot walk alone. Because whatever the state government is doing has to have the support of neighboring states, or all the northwestern states, because they are equally facing similar security challenges. Is it Katsina? Is it Kaduna? Is it Sokoto? Is it Kebbi?
Niger and the rest.
In fact, even the middle
states, Benue,
Niger and Kwara.
Even though
Niger
though the dimension is not also the same.
It's not the same, but of course Niger you can count it in that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it is supposed to be a collective effort, so that whatever measures, you remember there were certain measures that were taken, shutting down the telecommunication, closing markets, banning telephone. They simply migrate to the other side. And that, to a large extent, we know the strength of our security forces, they cannot be everywhere at the same time.
Right.
And we know that some of these places are not accessible. Most of we have entered into rainy season. So whatever you are doing, you have to take into consideration these peculiarities.
Yeah.
And it goes back to such things. To what extent are we really investing in the human resources that is the strength of this country?
Right.
It is not just education and all there is. What do you talk about? Infrastructural development, roads, hospital, the education, and so on and so forth, and
Yeah.
economy of the people too.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Looking at this and perhaps what needs to be done, to address the root causes of the problem. And I mean, all solutions they say are local. Whatever you do, in terms of the procurement, in terms of the military action, you still have to come back to address the underlying causes. You talk about unemployment. You talk about the rising poverty, and so on and so forth. But looking at, the choices before us. Take, for instance, Nigeria has been spending huge amount of money, just like we said, procuring even arms, hardwares. At some point, we're talking about 12 Super Tucanos, we're talking about the M3, the other, line of aircraft that were procured or about to be procured. These are huge amounts of money. At some point, people are beginning to argue, why not channel these resources that we are putting into providing the security to addressing the root causes? That way, we'll be able to, one, address the problem, and then two, address also the root causes of the problem. Would you be, how would you align yourself with those who think that we have to cut down, on the security spendings and then address the root causes?
Well, you cannot say you want to cut down because it will affect certain things. And also, all the allocations they have subhead. Take, for instance, I was made to understand one of the, if facilities or equipment of one of the security agencies, for it to have the fuel consumption alone runs into hundreds of millions of naira. So you can imagine that kind of thing. And if you want to utilize it effectively, so do you want to stop that? Or is it the current expenditure, given the number of human resources that you have, salaries and allowances, is it the one that you will stop? So I think we need to have a comprehensive approach to the whole issue. And beyond that, again, the national security strategy is a kind of guide that talks about, taking ownership of security of this country by the people. But what extent have we integrated the people into the security, solutions of this country?
That's right.
What is the level of the security education, and to what extent have you equipped the people to perform their duties as citizens?
And
now, again, what are the root causes? Some of them we have made mention is the issue of poverty, ignorance, economic deprivation, and what are you doing to improve those? What are you doing to ensure that the dividends of democracy has reached the people, so that people will not be enticed by the criminal elements? I will give you an example. What is happening at the local level? But thankfully, I think we will definitely have to find a lasting solution, because they have exhausted the rural area. They have exhausted, so they are moving towards, towards the city areas. Because the people, invariably, the richest man in a particular village could not have an income of 1 million naira per annum. Now he has been made to pay a ransom, jettisoning all his assets to the tune of maybe 10 or 20 million naira. He has nothing.
The local economy has completely
collapsed. Now they are looking forward, and these criminal elements, they have created a lifestyle that they need to sustain. And we even had, some time ago, hundreds of millions of naira were paid a ransom. So
some are even about to be paid, because looking at the demand of those who abducted the train passengers, they're talking about 4.something billion.
Who is the intermediary that is collecting that money? And I cannot imagine a bandit or a kidnapper to be moving about with even 5 million naira on a backsack
Some are beginning
in the
to-
bush.
some are
So
beginning-
somebody invests.
Some are beginning to ask questions whether
And
those monies are being buried in the forest.
Exactly. So we are supposed to ask questions about the local banking system that is sustaining that. So people are benefiting from the security challenges that we are having.
Right.
And some of them are living with us. And we are oblivious of that fact. And those are the issues that we are supposed to address.
Right.
And
Okay.
unless you do that, you cannot be able to address that unless everybody is given sense of belonging so that he will understand that he is not
Has a
just
role
a
to play.
stakeholder, but he has a responsibility.
That's right. Okay, we'll be looking at the economics of the warfare, so to speak, because you raised that quite a fundamental issue. Dropping, for instance, some would say the cost of dropping a bomb in a particular community, or is enough to drop a number of projects, water, education, and so on and so forth. Perhaps we'll have to be doing the calculations and see which one will benefit us more. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and today we're looking at addressing Nigeria's complex security situation. And we have in the studio an ex-military chief, army chief, talking about Brigadier General Sani Usman Kuka Sheka, retired, and he's been giving us his perspective on the issues and, of course, what need to be done, perhaps some of the missing links. We'll take a short break. When we return, the discussion continues.
That's great.
Thank you very much for staying with us. It's still Daily Politics, and it's coming to you live from Trust Television here in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. And today we're looking at addressing Nigeria's complex and multidimensional security challenges with retired Brigadier General Sani Usman Kuka Sheka, a former spokesperson of the Nigerian Army. Together we'll be looking at the security situation in the country with particular emphasis on the underlying causes, the missing links, and we're also about to talk about the solutions. Before the break, we were talking about the need perhaps to integrate the people, to make the people in line with the national security policy, to own the security, to be part of the security processes and what have you. And then some say there is an eroding confidence on the part of this society with regards to the activities of the security agencies, perhaps because of certain obvious reasons. People sometimes volunteer perhaps to dish out information with regards to hideouts, activities of criminal elements and so on and so forth. But in the end, they are compromised. This has eroded a lot of confidence between the security agencies and the public. And again, you talk about security education, which is also fundamental. People are not properly engaged as to what they can do to also help in addressing this problem we are talking about. What are the missing links in this? What do you think is missing in terms of integrating the people to get them, to make them have this self of ownership and confidence in handling the situation?
Well, first and foremost, I think the starting point is to go back to total reorientation of the Nigerian society. The value systems and the family system, because ideally, the institutional developments build on the foundation that is there. A properly or well brought up child definitely going to a good school and meeting with the right people, and you have the institutional mechanism, will grow up to be a very good citizen of the country. But whereby you have a missing link, either right from the family system, part of the educational system, then you have a problem. Now, the orientations, the civic education, they are all part and parcel of making a good citizen. But they ought to be built on certain foundation. But first and foremost, the foundation is not even there now. So whatever you are trying to reinforce will also be faulty. So these are some of the things. And time-tested conflict resolution mechanism. You know, the level of sense of belonging and understanding among the components of the Nigerian society. Unlike the time past, you know, like, take for instance yourself, being a veteran journalist, you may not necessarily, you may come from Kaduna State, for instance, but you have friends in other parts of the country that you are so sure that your friend Emeka in Enugu, whether you are there or not, he will definitely do what is expected of him or not. But over time, those things are gradually giving way, and we are not trying to reinforce them. And in fact, the younger generation are even being left apart because of the value system.
So the gap is widened.
So basically, unless we go back to those things, that is one. Secondly, of course, the leading agency, apart from the family system, is the government. To what extent, what are those in the governance system that ensure such things? There are so many responsibilities, you know, making the citizens, you know, so in line with the constitutional requirements for him or her to aspire to the greatest, you know, aspiration that he or she, because he knows that the system is there. So, corrupt practices had to be addressed, because the level of corruption is just unprecedented, and that is why people who are supposed to benefit from certain things are not benefiting. So that is one. Secondly, to what extent have you truly invested in your security architecture? And I would like to also
investment. You know, sometimes there's limited resources. You know, so many things.
Let me tell you. Everybody knows that democracy is one of the most expensive. Is the best. Is the best form of government. Is also one of the most expensive forms of government. Now, to what extent have you envisaged that and prepared the Nigerian society? You know, creating institutions and, you know, building those, strengthening those institutions to live up to this. Let me talk about maybe the policing system. To what extent have you prepared your policing system to meet up with the complete, you know, resolution mechanism of the 21st century? These are the issues. You don't even have the number. The equipment holding is not there. The training is not there. So how do you expect magic?
Talking about, you know, all of these challenges, some would say it requires a lot of collaboration, just like you said. Beyond collaboration among the security agencies and proper coordination, there is also need for synergy among the tiers of government. For instance, the federal government is doing its own best. States, you know, also need to complement. And then the absence of the local government system is also fundamentally adding to the problem. But it's a national emergency, some will say. Looking at the impact it is making, the insecurity situation in Nigeria, for instance, going by the data, 2021, has cost Nigeria 2.4% of its total GDP, for instance. We're talking about $142 billion economic impact just in 2021, for instance. This makes it perhaps one of the biggest challenges Nigeria has to confront with. But what do you make up with the level of synergy among these tiers of government? Beyond the controversies around, you know, state policing, beyond, you know, the federal government is over-dominating the other arms, other tiers of government and so on. What do you make up with the level of synergy, and how can it be improved?
Well, we know that the level of synergy, coordination, and collaboration needs to be improved. That means we are not yet there. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had some of the security challenges that we are having. Take, for instance, the recent attack at the correctional facilities and what have you. Therefore, we need to improve on the coordination, the synergy, cooperation, and support given to the security agencies. There are some of them that they are government responsibilities, there are some of them that they are the responsibilities of the citizen. But usually the government leads the way. Who are those responsible for the coordination? Why are they not coordinating? Why is it that there is not enough synergy among, the component of the security architecture? Take, for instance, why is it that at the correctional services you have inmates that will even organize kidnapping successfully and robbery successfully, and after it has been discovered, there is nothing? Or why is it that the Department of State Service will track phone calls by criminal elements to the four walls of the correctional facilities and nothing happens?
Intelligence sharing and implementation.
Well, they have done. So these are the issues. Of course, individually they cannot cooperate among themselves or coordinate. Somebody has to do the coordination.
Is it?
So there is so much to be done in respect of that. With that, and that perhaps that is one of the reasons that you have been investing so much and you are not seeing the dividends, because they are, operating on, silos instead of coordinating and cooperating. And if you look at it, I'm not trying to praise the, but in the armed forces, to a large extent, the synergy of efforts is marvelous, and you can see the results.
The action, yeah.
So, it is supposed to be so with other components of the architecture, security architecture, but they need to be coordinated. They need to be, they need to be given more sense of directions to that effect.
Right.
So they should be devoid of those, protecting their territory and what have you.
Right.
But beyond that, there are certain things that are not necessarily in that direction.
Okay.
Going back to the issue of the good governance, I said,
Right.
to what extent have you created an enabling environment for, well-meaning Nigerians to aspire to become? Because ordinarily, there are certain people in this country that's 5,000 naira.
Yeah, we'll change. We'll make a lot in there.
A lot of difference. Now, what is the, do I say banking system that could support such enterprises, small and medium scale, macroeconomic
enablers.
Yes, that is why whenever you see criminals, doing all this set of things, they are filling in a vacuum.
Even the space, they are filling the gap. Where there is,
because it is the absence of something that they decide to entice the people.
Take,
for instance, in the rural area, what mechanism, we know that people with keke napep, it makes a difference. With a gob car, it will make a difference.
Right.
With even a motorcycle, it will make a difference. In fact, provision of fertilizer for them to farm and securing the environment will make a difference. To what extent have you guaranteed such things so that the farmer could do that and the trader could do that, so that anybody that comes with any criminal tendency, he will have the courage to say no.
Right.
Now they are enticing our youth, not only
an alternative,
yes, drug addiction, but beyond that, assisting them with soft loans, so to speak.
Even in terms
and
of
course, in return, they are getting information. Because part of the security challenges we have is the menace of the informants.
That's right.
Now, especially, and that is why the military are having a hell of time, because anytime there is a distress cause, you rise, you want to go, the next thing somebody will make a phone call. In fact, they have pejorative means that they will say, they will ask in Hausa, how many kunkuru? Kunkuru is two tortoise. But of course, they are referring to some of the equipment of the military. If they say one kunkuru, so automatically they know the kind of, whether it is APC or just, healer's vehicle and what have you.
And sometimes
so these are the issues.
And sometimes the compromised information even within comes from within.
Naturally, there there is none that will happen without an insider collaboration. Because there is a serious war economy going on. People are benefiting, people that are surprising, supplying them with drugs.
Yeah.
Because under normal circumstances, most of them, especially the kingpins, most of them, they sustain themselves by taking, stimulants and what have you to commit the atrocities they are doing.
That's right.
So people do that. Some people are banking that money they collect for ransom for them. Some people are bringing women for them. Some people are supplying them with logistics.
There's a value chain. So
Exactly. Some people supply them with weapons.
That's right. Okay, now that the non-state actors are beginning to up the game and perhaps overwhelming somehow the security architecture, we're beginning to see some level of coordination. For instance, Daily Trust reported a number of attacks across the country, about 6 states, about 5 states, including the
In
FCT.
your publication of today,
For instance,
yes, I've seen it.
if something like this is happening, Nigerians will begin to get worried that, okay, it means that these guys are becoming emboldened and are having a kind of structure to coordinate certain attacks across the country, unchecked.
Well, I'm not doubting some of these things, but at the same time, just like I earlier mentioned, everybody has a responsibility. It is not always the negative aspect of it.
Yes, right.
Beyond that, what are those wonderful things that the security agencies have done over that period of time? It was not reported. And I know, and I can mention several others. So basically, we have to be careful not to be eulogizing these criminal elements. And and that is why everybody has reduced the story of the unfortunate incident that happened in Katsina State, somewhere around Dusama, where unfortunately our younger brother was also killed, by
the Assistant Commissioner of Police.
Aminu Umar.
So may Allah forgive him.
Amen. So you see, some of this issue are just coincidental. A convoy is passing. Of course, there was an incident along Savannah Road in Zakka, in which Aminu went to do a marvelous job, but they were crossing. Coincidentally, they had siren and water. So they were thinking it was the security forces that were responding. Of course, the convoy had to also defend themselves. But a lot of people were saying, of course, it is not an excuse such things should happen. People should have freedom of movement wherever in this country. It shouldn't have happened. So basically, it is the responsibility of you guys also to kind of reduce such complex stories, and so that people will understand the circumstances under which it occurred, not that lump them into, so that people will understand what really happened, so that they will have confidence.
And again, some sort of sympathy again, because it is wondering. I mean, it is also disturbing and unfortunate to see the number of forces we're losing. The statistics is not palatable. For instance, based on the statistics, we've been losing huge number of personnel across board. In 2021 alone, we lost, I think I have the numbers here, quite disturbing, among the military personnel that we lost. We're talking about 642 soldiers, for instance, 322 police officers, and 129 vigilantes. This is, from the J.P. Morgan, statistics that were read out last year. It is quite disturbing. And then these are, also human beings. They have families, they have relatives, and what have you. How much are we doing to encourage our fighting forces? And what needs to be done to also appreciate them and take care of their loved ones, in the event they pay the supreme price?
Well, this is one question that both of us will answer, and the answer to part of it, both of us will answer as Nigerian citizens. And we have started talking about, the pattern of reporting, how you frame stories, especially of acts of terrorism and criminality by the criminal elements, and acts of gallantry by our, security forces.
That's right.
We are supposed to encourage them. We are supposed to support them, knowing fully well they are doing there for us. I mean, they are doing whatever they're doing on our behalf. So, and they are also human beings.
That's right.
They are parents, they are children, they are spouses, as the case may be. So, that is one. Then secondly, to what extent is the government or the respective services are taking care of
Yeah.
the families of those who
dependents.
have paid the supreme prices, or those who are wounded in action and all the rest of the thing. These are the issues that we are supposed to investigate to know whether actually it is commensurate to the services these guys are providing or not.
Yeah.
But beyond that, again, to what extent are we training them, are we equipping them to ensure that they are more secured and they perform their professional duties diligently without necessarily being casualties? These are the issues.
That's right.
Then again, beyond that too, you have to think of those things that brought about the conflicts, because some of them are not only unnecessary, but there are better ways of resolving the conflicts. Because we have this knee-jerk approach.
Yeah.
In most instances, issues that will come up, especially the state governors will call for military deployment of the military. When in real sense, the solution to some of these problems lies
It's perhaps political.
exactly,
It has to do with governance, for instance.
or even economic.
Economic, that's right.
So these are the issues. So a lot need to be done in that regard to ensure that those people that are there on behalf of the Nigerian society to defend its territorial integrity by dealing with security challenges as manifested in insurgency, banditry, and kidnapping are really given the desired, support by the government and the people of this country.
Right. Okay. So, lastly, because we're rounding up, how do we reduce, the threat? Because the threat is widening, so to speak. Is multiplying. Is escalating, so to speak, from insurgency to banditry to kidnapping to all sorts of things that we're talking about. How do we tame the tide? How do we reduce, this complex? You're talking about part of it is issue of governance and so on and so forth. But how do we begin to look at other aspects of addressing this problem beyond the militarization? Again, we also have the issue of addressing the fallout. For instance, the number of displaced, reconstruction, and what have you. We have multiple challenges ahead of. Do you suggest perhaps having a comprehensive blueprint as to how we're going to handle the aftermath?
Naturally, there should be. But if you are addressing some of these challenges, you cannot address them if you don't know what brought about the challenges in the first place, the root causes of some of them. If you look at what really brought about the banditry and the kidnapping that we're having in Northwest, there are issues of injustice.
Yeah.
There are issues of criminality. So you are supposed to have various approaches to this. And that is why the framework and the comprehensive approach is important. People were rightly, unjustly, or extrajudiciously killed, by vigilante and sake and what have you. And what are you doing to ensure justice? People have been victims, for no apparent reason.
That's right.
What are you doing to apprehend those criminal elements? Because some of them, they are within reach. It is not everybody that is out there in the bush.
At some point, we'll talk about people financing, We also
exactly.
talk
To
about
what extent are you tracing that? And, usually you follow the money. I mentioned that I cannot imagine a bandit would be moving about with 5 million naira, So where is the 5 million naira? Who is banking it or who is keeping it in trust for him?
That's right.
Or where did he invest it? So these are the issues.
And that is the reason why we have the National Financial Intelligence Unit.
That is if they go to the bank with it. And the human intelligence.
That's right.
You have had instances suddenly in a society, somebody who is unemployed, suddenly you are seeing him building a house. What is his source of
income?
Nobody. Sometimes it could be a public servant. You understand? So we ask the appropriate question, but in asking the appropriate question and reporting to the security agencies, what are the protection mechanisms to such people?
Yes, I talked about that.
Then even if they report acts of criminality going on, do you really empower the security agencies to respond appropriately? What is the logistics? Take, for instance, you have a divisional police headquarters with only one Hilux. And you know the allocation, the monthly allocation for fueling is less than 20,000 naira. Are you really serious about this issue?
So we have to summon the political will, to be able to respond to these issues.
These are the issues. And again,
Thank you.
to what extent are you integrating, the role of traditional rulers and other leaders in the country into, the conflict resolution mechanism of this country? Because some people, in fact, there were some of them that have offered to even negotiate. Not necessarily to negotiate to make peace. To what extent are we exploring this kind of thing? So these are the things. And to what extent are we also improving on the Nigerian society's well-being?
Thank you very much, General. We can go on and on. It's a continuous conversation, but we have to end it here because time has been past spent. Thank you very much, retired Brigadier General Sani Usman Kuka Sheka, for talking to us on daily politics.
Thank you very much.
We really
it's a pleasure to be here.
We really appreciate your perspectives. On behalf of our guests and the technical crew, this is where we have to draw the curtain on this program. In case you're just joining us, it's been Daily Politics, and my name is Shafiu Suleiman. Do have yourself a wonderful time ahead.